Welcome back to Demystify Sci. My name is Anastasia.
I'm Shiloh.
And today we are talking ancient archaeology. We do not quite veer into the territory of ancient apocalypse, but we are talking Gunung Padang with the lead archaeologist on the site, Danny Hillman Natawidjaja, who...
He's one of the first people to examine the ancient site of Gunung Padang in the context of, hey, this is a big hillside with really interesting man-made features on the surface, generally thought to be some sort of cemetery or holy site, but it looks like the hill itself might have something going on deep inside of it. So why don't we apply some of our really high-tech, cool laser toys towards this question and start doing some scans and actually drill some holes and see what's down there. And him and his team found some really crazy results from that study, and they published it and went through peer review.
And then the paper got retracted. And normally when papers get retracted, it's because of scientific fraud. Somebody has literally manipulated data. They've invented experiments that they never did. They copied portions of pictures from one place to another. But the reason that this paper got retracted is because the people who petitioned the retraction didn't like the conclusions that Danny and his colleagues made. Namely, that Gunung Padang is perhaps 27,000 years old at its oldest extremity. And people really didn't like that.
The strange thing is that in order to date something like a stone, you really have to find an artifact, or you have to find some sort of charcoal remnants with carbon in it or in the soil around it. And so that's what they've done, is they pulled out this soil from these different layers of the compound. And the interesting pushback seems to be that none of these, even more superficial layers themselves, count as human-made stoneworks, even though they're very conspicuous-looking stone structures. And we show a bunch of images of these in the podcast, so you guys can make up your own mind. They do not look like natural formations, and it's really sad because Danny responded to these criticisms to the journal, but was never given any time of day after that. And he pointed out a really, really salient point, which is, hey, okay, if they're not human constructs and therefore we can't date them, then you need to tell me at least what these kind of stones are, because you guys don't seem to understand the geology of this region, and tell me how those stones got there, because they're not naturally occurring in that region. These ones that are laid out, and the way that they're laid out is not a naturally occurring way in which they're laid out. So
as we get into the discussion of the specifics of Gunung Padang, we have a lot of photographs in the episode, and so it's a visual one for sure, where we really try to illustrate as we go what it is that we're looking at, and allow you to see it and to evaluate whether or not it looks like what Danny says that it is. I came into the conversation pretty skeptical. I left much less skeptical. I think that it's incredibly unfair for a paper to be retracted on the basis of a conclusion, which seems to not have any substance behind it. The retraction letter is short. It's like a paragraph.
Because if you had to retract every single paper that the conclusions were wrong about, you'd be missing more than half of the body of scientific literature that we have today. I mean, the conclusions are literally the place where you're supposed to discuss potential stories to explain the data. It's not facts. They're just theorizing, right? So it's just really tragic. I feel really bad for him. And, whether or not he's right is a different question than whether this idea should be allowed to exist in the literature. So, and he's got crazy stories, and he tells about new findings about the entire sunken continent of Sundaland, which is this big shelf that used to be present during the last glaciation and is now submerged. And there's probably a lot of really interesting archaeology under there. And so we get some tastes of what may come in future years with some hints of what might be happening below the surface there. So it's a really cool episode. I'm really excited. Danny is a really knowledgeable chap, and we're really excited.
And one of the few people who's studying this. There's a small number of people around the world that are studying anomalously old artifacts. or sites, and he's one of them.
On site,
on
too.
site, exactly. And so if you like what we do, if you like the show, as always, consider supporting us on Patreon. We are at patreon.com/demystifysci. And honestly, a small donation of $1 to however many dollars a month. You get 1,000. We have an aspirational
small donation
tier
of $1 million.
If you have money burning a hole in your pocket and you like to support the creators that you love, consider supporting Demystify Sci. We really firmly believe in the fact that ideas should not be the vessel upon which advertisements are slathered. This is not meant to sell you stuff. This is meant to stand alone. And it doesn't have a home in the academy because we're talking about ideas like we see with Danny that are not necessarily allowed to have their moment in the academy. And so if you have the ability to share...
We promote distasteful conclusions.
Yeah, we absolutely do. But if you have the ability to support this, if you have the ability to give us a small donation on a monthly basis, it means the world to us, and it literally makes us be able to make this podcast. And so consider coming over to patreon.com/demystifysci. You get to join our weekly patron chat. If you don't want to come to the chat, we are also posting videos from the chat, and so you can catch up on it later. That's also on the Patreon. And we're just building a group of really cool people who are interested in the same things.
And if you don't have any money, that's cool. Just share the podcast with somebody who you think will enjoy it. That's the best way to spread the word. Remember to subscribe, like, give us good ratings. All that stuff is a big help, and it costs you nothing, but it propels this thing forward. So, yeah, enjoy the conversation. Tell us your thoughts in the comments, and we will see you next time.
The scientific revolution starts now.
The Demystify Sci podcast.
Let us see in the dark.
One of the biggest problems in Indonesia, most of the archaeological sites, including the famous Borobudur Prambanan, has not been dated yet with the radiometric method. That's the biggest problem, I would say.
How have they dated them?
Oh, that's just referred to old previous studies and the manuscript, the old manuscript. But the old manuscript is not in the AD. It's in the old calendar. It's called Shaka. It's the same as the India, the Shaka year calendar. But I think it's wrong. The big mistake is with the transformation from Shaka year to Gregorian. So it just added 78 years. But if we ask the calendar expert or the historian why he add the 78 years, no answer. I said, it's just our agreements. We add 78 years. Well, I know the reasons, but it's not really strong. It's very weak.
What site are you guys talking about?
We're talking about a site in Indonesia. And was this about Angkor Wat?
No. Well, we talk about the general sites, the archaeological sites in Indonesia that has not been dated. So they just determine the age based on the old manuscript, but it's based on the Shaka calendar, the ancient Shaka calendars.
I think before we get too deep into it, like Nastia said, we should just get a little bit of your background and figure out who Danny Hillman is and, you know, why you got interested in the things that we're going to be talking about today. And then we'll move into earthquakes and tsunamis and Gunung Padang and all the implications of that and catastrophes in general and all of that fun stuff. But yeah, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell people how you got your start and what's your fascination with the universe?
Yeah, I'm Danny Hillman, Natawidjaja. I've been trained as geologist. Got my BC from Bandung Institute of Technology and my master degree from University of Auckland. Specialized in structural geology and tectonics, and my PhD at Caltech, Pasadena, in earthquake geology and active tectonics. I'm working now with the Indonesian Research and Innovation Agency, Government Institute, the Government Research Institute, and also I'm a member of the Indonesian Academy of Science. It's the most prestigious government institute science in Indonesia. Also won some prestigious scientific awards also. And this year, I've been listed as the top 2% scientist of the world by that LC per Stanford ranking stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. So I came back from Caltech at that time. This is interesting. In 2004, July 2004, just 5 months before that, the great tsunami in Aceh, 2004, great tsunami that killed like 250,000 people. So, so that's kind of strange in my life. I've been living in Pasadena for like 8 years. So just after I came to Indonesia, 5 months later, there was a mega thrust earthquake and a tsunami. And
how rare are those, by the way? Is that a really rare event? Like I wish I should know this already,
rare.
but
yeah,
is that really bad luck, or is that really, really, really bad luck?
Oh yeah. So it's like 500 to 600 cycles of the mega thrust. So I studied them, the cycles at mega thrust in Sumatra. So after I came back at 2004 July, I engaged in many public dissemination, the education about the megathrust and the tsunami threat in West Sumatra. We made lots of brochures and pamphlets for the people to warn to warn them that there's a big threat in West Sumatra, the big earthquake and tsunami. And at that time, people just look at me and, we never have a great earthquake and tsunami in this region. Are you crazy? Something like that. I'm kind of a weird person. And I also presenting our research about that threat, the tsunami threat in Sumatra, in national seminars. And then finally, we came to San Francisco for the American Geophysical Union fall meeting. It's a big meeting worldwide, 10,000 attendees. And at that time, and at that meeting, I presenting our research also together with my colleagues and my supervisor at the time, Professor Carisi. So again, at that seminars, we have several presentations, also posters about the tsunami threat in Aceh. That is from 11 December to like 20 December. And I come back to Indonesia on 25 December 2004. So just one day before that event. And then at the 26th December, I go to my office just to start my office again. And then somebody knocked my office and they said, "Hey, Danny, there's a big earthquake in Sumatra." They said there's a tsunami. I said, "What?" So I'm shocked at that time. At the first warning, it said the earthquake is magnitude 8, but like 1 hour later, they said, "Well, it's more than that. It's magnitude 9." Right?
That's unbelievable.
So
how can I ask you though? I didn't quite understand. How often are there magnitude 9 quakes over there? Like, when was the previous mega tsunami?
Yeah, the previous one is 15th century.
Whoa. Okay, so very, very rare.
BC. Yeah, it's about 500 to 600 years recurrent interval. Yeah, and the interesting also that disaster, the tsunami disaster in Aceh, like changed the course of the history of Aceh from the chaos periods, lots of wars with the separated group stuff, fighting with the government. But after the tsunami, yes, there's a disaster, but it gave like safety and prosperity to the Aceh people now. And before that, from the previous tsunami in 15th century, before that tsunami occurred, there's an ancient kingdom. It's called the Samudra Pasai. But then suddenly in the history, the kingdom gone, it disappeared. And then a new kingdom appeared. It's called the Sultanate Aceh. It's different kingdom. It's not a continuation of the old kingdom. When the old kingdom is still like indigenous kingdom, there is no mixing races. But this new Sultanate Aceh has India, has China, has other, from Middle East also. So they mix. And at that time, the historian just puzzled why it's so sudden. But when we learned there's a big tsunami, a giant tsunami, before that the new kingdoms appeared, then we understand. So I think that's the first lesson for me to learn that the natural disasters can change the human history.
Yeah, I wonder how many other cases of that. There's all these what do they call them, like 4.8 year events, these different events throughout the ancient world that have rewritten things, like the eruption of the volcano that's somehow timed with the Bronze Age collapse as well. And
well, even more than that, there's geologic time periods that are supposed to be caused by the eruption of volcanoes. The snowball Earth is sometimes thought to be partially from volcanic activity. And I know that this has changed, but for a long time, they thought that the dinosaurs went extinct because of volcanoes.
I remember that.
And so there is this sense that like very, very bad things can happen when volcanoes erupt, when earthquakes happen.
It's weird though. He said that the people stopped fighting after the tsunami. Is that right? You said that was it the Aceh people? They stopped fighting? Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
Yes, because it all collapsed and all the separatists, maybe lots of them killed with the tsunami, so that the Indonesian government reformed the countries. Like a new government.
So the resistance was quashed by nature.
Yeah, right.
Interesting.
Is this a common feature in the landscape of Southeast Asia, where you have these sorts of natural disasters that then impact the way that society is organized? Because the reason that I think it's more interesting there than perhaps elsewhere is because there's a vision of the tropics as being this kind of immutable place for long periods of time. You read that, some of the forests in the tropics.
Like climate-wise.
Yeah, climate-wise. Some of the forests in the tropics have been there, I think, for 40 million years or something continuously, which suggests that, okay, so you have this long, stable climatic condition. And if other civilizations fall because of climate changes, then you would need something else to really screw things up in Indonesia and in the Southeast Asia.
Yeah. So, Indonesia is the earthquake and volcanoes country and the Ring of Fire. We have like 160 volcanoes, active volcanoes. Before I study, people also, just know like a few active fault zones like San Andreas Fault. But after we studied for 2 decades, we identify like 300 fault segments. So it's just it's an earthquake country. There are lots of earthquake there. So what I'm saying is the country like Indonesia is very prone to natural disasters in terms of earthquake, volcanoes, landslides, tsunami, and stuff. So it's really shaped it should shape the human history, like what happened in Aceh. So like in Pompeii, for example, that the volcanic eruption buried the people. We also found similar events in Indonesia, in two locations where the volcano eruption just buried the entire villages, entire kingdom. In terms of the global climate change, the rise in sea level since the last glacial age, 130 meters, affects lots in Indonesia because I think like 2/3 of Indonesian area is now submerged under ocean because of that sea level rise.
Yeah, I want to talk about, let's get to that in a minute, because the whole Sundaland story deserves a bit more attention. That's a huge factor. So it sounds like you were one of the first people to really be bringing this seismic geology, is that what it's called? Seismic geology to Indonesia. Archaeoseismology. And what was the scene like when you showed up and started to investigate these things? What was it like to build a program that studied this for the first time?
Yeah. So like in an active fault, I'm starting it like from almost zero, right? Before people even doesn't know what tsunami is. It's well known in Indonesia. So similar to archaeology, the like earth science geologists like me who study archaeology in Indonesia, I think I'm the first one to do that. And it's still rare when our method in geology applied in the archaeological sites, including the radiometric dating. So I think most of the archaeologists here in Indonesia doesn't really know how to do that, you know. So even in the worldwide, it's not really, you know, it's like accelerating this geoarchaeology stuff, right? But it just began like a decade ago, when before we do the geoarchaeology in Gunung Padang, applying all that resistivity tomography, seismic tomography, you know, GPR and stuff. I see that even worldwide, it's not many people. But after we do that in Gunung Padang, I think it like motivate people to do that. So like the geoarchaeological exploration in Stonehenge, it's been conducted after our research in Gunung Padang. Our research in Gunung Padang we conducted from 2011 to 2014, the field survey, and Stonehenge archaeological exploration just started like 2015 or 2016 even. So. But I think it's an exciting field.
What are the specifics of the change that happened in Stonehenge? Because they'd been looking at it for some time. Like, did they start just using different techniques to pursue it?
Yeah, they're using the ground penetrating radar. They're mapping the underground of the Stonehenge, and they found that the Stonehenge is not just solely a Stonehenge, relatively small site, but it's much bigger archaeological landscape. So now they know that the Stonehenge is like a huge complex of megalithic sites. And also the ages become older and older. Before Stonehenge is only 2,500 BCA, now it's like, 5,000. It's getting older and older.
Last time I looked, they were trying to build a highway underneath Stonehenge. Is that still happening? Does anybody know?
Probably. I think
really
there's been protests. But,
okay.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we cover these new methods that he was bringing to the table.
Yeah. So when you start to look with ground penetrating radar, like this is a technology that has gotten pretty popular in the last maybe decade or so. But if we're talking about the specific techniques of archaeoseismology, what does that look like? What is it specifically something that you can see in the ground penetrating radar, or what are the pieces of evidence you're using to put it together?
Yeah, absolutely. Ground penetrating radar, the resistivity tomography, the seismic tomography, we can scan the underground. We can scan the I did that for active faults. Now we are scanning the man-made structures underground from a couple of millimeters to tens of meters to even hundreds of meters. So we could know what's in underground before we dig them. So we will have like it's more precise where to dig. Right. So, and also like lidar image, we use that a lot for mapping the active faults and other geological phenomena like landslide or all of them. But now they use it for archaeological sites too, like in Mayan, for example. So they could find lots of pyramids in the jungle. I would think that if we do the same in Indonesia, in Borneo, for example, the jungles, I would think we will see many things there.
It must be really difficult to know where specifically to go, right? Because I feel like the Guatemalan discoveries about the Mayan civilization are aided by the fact that a bunch of pyramids are already there. And so people are kind of like, well, I don't know, let's do circles until we find something else. And if we're looking for something that nobody's been able to find yet, like, how do you even begin to figure out where to start in a place like Borneo?
Well, we already have the digital topography, right? It's not, it's enough resolution. Like now, Indonesia has 8-meter resolution digital topography, DEM. So we could first look into that. And also we have Google Earth. We have many stories, previous research. So with that method so that we can focusing on some interested areas or whatever we want. We could explore that the archaeological sites, and then we could conduct a more higher resolution like LiDAR mapping, which is it's a bit expensive, right? But now we have a drone LiDAR, we could do it ourselves if we have that drone with LiDAR. So then we could identify from just a visual observation of the landscape with that detailed DM when you look. So.
And are there places there already that people have found really tantalizing clues to more advanced cultures than we currently assume were there? Or is that still very poorly filled in, that landscape?
Are there places where?
Well, so I think that everybody here agrees that it's pretty likely that there was some kind of more advanced organization of people in Southeast Asia, especially in this place called Sundaland, at around the time of the last ice age. The ocean levels were a lot lower, so you had this huge continental shelf that was exposed, and on that continental shelf, people must have been living.
You just saved Sundaland for a minute. We're not quite there yet. By the way, I looked up Stonehenge for anybody who wanted to hear about that, and they literally were planning on building a highway under it, but then UNESCO tried to essentially say they were going to take away their UNESCO World Heritage privileges. A bunch of countries signed a petition, and they still planned on doing it. It was going ahead as of 2020, but then, because it cost 1.7 billion pounds, the government decided they couldn't afford to do it.
Wow.
So saved because it was too expensive. So yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to derail you, but I do want to talk about Sundaland, but I think it's really important in the context of Gunung Padang.
It is in the context of, but we're also talking about like doing LiDAR studies in Borneo, and Borneo's in the same area. And so I'm like, it's hard for me to imagine a condition where you have this raised shelf of land during the last ice age and at the end of the last ice age. And then being able to find stuff that dates to the last ice age at what must have been the absolute highest points, right? Like most of what people would have had would have been in the lower elevations. And so...
Yeah, people don't tend to live on top of mountains.
To this day, yeah. Like it's an uncomfortable place to live very often.
Except for the Inca, but not most of them.
Yeah, exactly. And so do you think that with what's been found on Borneo and the degree to which evidence of advanced civilizations or even temple building civilizations have been found, do you think that...
Well, even now, we know there are many very interesting megalithic sites in Indonesia. That's including the past megalithic areas in central Sulawesi, like huge areas full of the megalithic statues made by granites and also other things. It's like an Easter island, maybe it's bigger, and it's granite. It's a huge archaeological site, and we don't know the age, but I think I suspect that the age is the same age as as old as the Göbekli Tepe. We just have to date them. And also the central Sumatra, there's also a vast megalithic site that hasn't really explored, and we don't know the date. But they have a status, figures that really look like Olmec. Really look like Olmec with the helmet, with the thick lips, with big eye, and all the war clothes.
What was the name of that? What if I wanted to find a picture of that? What would I search for?
If you type Pasema Megalithic in Sumatra, or Pagar Alam Megalithic site in central Sumatra, it will appear.
Okay, I think I got it. Wow, those are wild looking. What the heck is that? Oh my goodness. Yeah, this looks...
I think,
but almost, very similar to Mesoamerican stuff. I mean, I'm no expert, but...
And so you're telling me that these haven't been dated yet?
Well, you can't date rocks, right? That's the problem.
Okay, so this is something
we haven't really mapped them. comprehensively. We only like found maybe like 5% or 10% of them. There's still lots of the status is still underground or in the jungles there.
And is it hard to find contemporaneous evidence that has survived to be dated? Because I feel like archaeology dates things by finding artifacts, right? You find something wooden that's at the base of the statue, and then you can date the thing and say, okay, ergo, this must be really ancient. But if you can't do that, then how do you date these things?
Yeah, that's the things. We have to apply all the methods that we have. So on this megalithic sites exploration, we combine the geology and the archaeology. We could date them by the relationship between the artifacts and the sediments, the soil sediments. We can date the sediments, right? So we can have a date like a minimum date, a maximum date, or even a similar date. So like if this status is should be on the old ground. We call it the paleosoil. The paleosoil is the old soil in the ancient time. So if you could find the paleosoil when this megalithic built, when the culture is still lives, so we can date the megalithic status, or if this megalithic status buried by, say, the volcanic eruption, the tuff, and we can date the tuff, then we can at least say that the megalithic is older than the tuff, right? So all that kind of method we have to use. And like the granite statue in Central Sulawesi, it's even easier to do because we can apply the cosmogenic dating. With the cosmogenic dating, we can date when that rocks cut from the source rock and then exposed to the sun rays. Then the clock will be ticking. That's how the cosmogenic dating works.
In reference to the lack of artifacts at these sites, do you think that it just has to do with the fact that most of these artifacts were subject to the climate that's much harsher in Indonesia compared to the deserts of Turkey or something like that?
What do you mean by the artifacts? The status are artifacts, right?
Well, most of the... But, I mean, from what I understand, Göbekli Tepe is dated from artifacts, right?
Like they found pieces of wood that they were able to do radiocarbon dating on, fabric, these sorts of... soil, like these sorts of soft things that have been preserved so
Same method that I apply. Yeah.
Why do we... But we don't find as many of these sorts of artifacts in Indonesia. Is that correct?
Because I'm like, if you had the artifact, why would you use the paleo? If you had the soft biologically produced object, why wouldn't you date that object instead of using the paleosoil? Because the paleosoil
it's not present.
That's what I'm trying to say. So it's like, if there were artifacts, would you be using the paleosoil data?
We use both, of course, but the artifacts like iron stuff, it will be gone in thousands years, even 100 years. It will be decayed to soils, right? It's really fast. It's very hard to find human remains that has been already thousands of years old, especially in the tropical region where the weathering processes, all the chemical, all the biological, bioturbation and stuff, it's really, really intensive. So it's very hard to find human remains. All the woods from the houses will be gone also. So what left is stones. That's why all the descriptions of megalithic stone is just megalithic stone, the stones, because all other things has been gone, has been decayed to soils. Right.
And so the follow-up to that is there something special about the Mediterranean climate that allows for the preservation of these wooden artifacts that you just don't see in the tropics?
We haven't found the wooden artifacts in Göbekli Tepe, right?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I don't think so. We haven't found any wood.
What is the dating
I think it's begun.
what are they dating in Göbekli Tepe? What are they using for the dates?
I think they already use several methods, including the radiocarbon dating.
Of what though? Of soil?
Of charcoal.
Of charcoal.
So it was so burned wood.
Mostly.
I see.
Yeah.
And do you have charcoal layers in Indonesia as well?
Oh, absolutely. Many of them.
I see, but not at this particular ancient site that we were just talking about, which I can't remember the name.
Oh,
of.
yeah, there are lots of them.
Really?
And also we can date tuffs, the volcanic tuffs, easily.
And
there are many things you can date. Yeah.
Do any of them reach as far back as Göbekli Tepe?
What do you mean? The site, the archaeological sites?
Any of the charcoal
soils.
The soil, the charcoal.
Yeah, the carbon date, the radiocarbon dates, primarily based on the charcoals, and the maximum age of the carbon date is 60,000 years.
So when we talk about dating paleosoils, are we talking about dating the charcoal, or are we talking about dating just dirt? And is there a difference?
Yeah, we can date the charcoal. Because the charcoal has almost no contamination. Charcoal, pure carbon, but we can also date like roots and trees that has been preserved in the soil. Particularly the roots, it will be better because the root is still in a standing position. That means that trees, it's really like living on that layers, right? That's the best samples for paleoseismological trenching, for example.
So when you're working at the site in Sumatra is Belumai? How do you pronounce that?
The site in Sumatra, Pasema?
I was looking, Shaila pulled one up that looks like from Pasema. Yeah, on the plateau of Pasema. For some reason, this thing says Belumai of something. Okay, so Pasema. So when you're looking at the digs at Pasema and you're looking at the digs at Göbekli Tepe, are you finding these sorts of preserved wooden features? Like you find tree roots?
I haven't studied that.
I see.
I haven't studied the megalithic sites now. I haven't got the chance to do that.
I see. But at Gunung Padang, at Gunung Padang, when you guys dig, do you find like 10,000-year-old tree roots?
The charcoals, the organic rich soils. We couldn't find the charcoals, but organic rich soils that we assume is remains from the old trees, grass roots and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So basically like geologic compost.
Right.
It seems like the difficulty is that you can say people were here, perhaps, but it's difficult to say that people who made these stones were here, or who carved these stones were here, other than the stones were moved on top of this soil, which can be dated to a certain age. But you don't know if the stones were moved or built if they were built before that as well. It's a very tricky thing to do, right? For instance, you could date the soil underneath one of these statues, and it could give you a certain date, let's say, 5,000 years arbitrarily. But maybe the statues were made somewhere else earlier and then moved to that site. And they could be...
No, you have to date the soils, the layers of soils that really connected to that status, the archaeological sites. Like if we have the status standing status, and if we could find the paleosol when the statue is still like on his period, then we can date that, and we can also we have to date that the sedimentary layers that buried the statues, because that will give you the minimum age. So we don't date the statues that like way below the status. That means there's the other sediments before the status has been even made. So we really have to date the the sedimentary layer or geological layers that really connected to the archaeological remains, the artifact or features.
I mean, I've always thought that this does seem reasonable. Like, I know that there's a lot of controversy about dating soils rather than artifacts. Would you agree with that?
No, not really.
Interesting.
Not
I thought
really.
that there was. Go ahead.
Dating soil is really common in geology. That's what we do in paleoseismological study. We're dating soils, we're dating boulders. It's, yeah.
Is it
But
more
it's not
common in
just
geology
calculating
than archaeology?
Mm.
Is it different in geology than archaeology?
Maybe slightly different perspective, maybe, but because the archaeologist doesn't really date that soils in terms of the geological soils. I think that what difference between geoarchaeology and archaeologists. But what I see the weakness of the dating in archaeology is the archaeologist is like really trying to find the human remains, like I don't know, foods or the bowl that has like a rice, whatever that remains of the human. That's around the artifacts, like in the Pasema, for example, we find that the stone megalithic sites, and they are looking for that human remains, the artifacts, wood or whatever, or ceramics, for example, they love ceramics, and they dated the ceramics, and they just interpret that the cultures that make that ceramics also make that statues, the granite. But it's not necessarily true, because we know that after the statues built, there should be lots of younger cultures that occupy these areas and leave the remains. So I think that's what archaeologists should really think about. When they did the human remains, it's not like directly connected to like the megalithic site.
And I think that this is what's
age.
Yeah, and I think that this is what's so tricky about this, is that there's not a single method that really, unless you find a document, a stone tablet where it is carved that in the year so and so, when so and so is making this pottery, and then they draw the pottery with the designs on it, we also happen to make this megalith. Like, that's really the piece of evidence that you would need in order to be able to recreate a story about the past that doesn't have some degree of wiggle room in it. And I think that the reason that people really like to date the stuff that's biological is because it allows you to get an absolute date. As far as I understand it, from soil samples, you can get stratigraphy and you can get relative dates, but people at conferences fight tooth and nail about whether or not those dates can be accepted as absolute dates for a site, right?
Yeah, the dating is very quite tricky business. Like the carbon dating, cosmogenic dating, all the dating has uncertainties, has contamination and stuff. So
it just seems to me like archaeology is an inherently extremely conservative science in that they want to keep the stories that are told about the past strictly confined to the facts that are as unambiguous as possible, and until new unassailable facts or pieces of evidence, like the stone tablet claiming when something was built, for instance, until something like that appears, archaeological community is very allergic to any speculation about things being older than they should be. I mean, we saw this happen recently in the United States, because when I was in college, the oldest people in the Americas were supposed to be the Clovis people. And the Clovis people obviously had nice artifacts, and so they were able to date this, right? And so it was reasonable that they thought that, but then all of a sudden they find these footprints from like 20,000 years ago in white sands, right? And so all of a sudden now they have reason to believe that they'd somehow missed 10,000 years of history, or whatever it was, 8,000 years or something like that. So it's almost like archaeology would rather be wrong than speculate on something that they might be wrong about.
But I want to make this point that the dating thing is so essential to it, because the white sands footprints were dated because they were able to find some grass seeds.
Right.
And because they dated the grass seeds, they were able to say, okay, now we have something that's biologically contemporaneous and isn't like, you know,
Exactly.
because you can make this argument, okay, dirt moves around. And
Didn't they find like some sloth footprints and stuff too?
yeah, they find all kinds of stuff. But again, like those are just marks in rocks. And until you have something that's biological, that's preserved somehow, I think everybody's really panicky about accepting those dates because I think you're right. They want to maintain an inherently conservative story.
It's extremely conservative, yeah. I think it's just worth keeping in mind. It's like they have to be that way because that's the way that discipline is built, is that they only make stories out of these really, really hard facts. And even though they might be missing most of the facts, they're not willing to use hypotheses like we do in science often.
Yeah, Danny, why do you think that archaeology is like that? Why do you think they're so conservative?
I don't know. I find the archaeology science, well, in Indonesia, what I know is a bit strange. When I digging the archaeological site in Gunung Padang, and I would like to make our trenching open for public, so the public can come and can discuss what in there, you know, have a discussion, have a debate, whatever. But we have facts there. So I talked to our archaeologist team and said we have to open this trenching so the all the people can see. And what he told me that what for? What for? It's not really important for our archaeological community. Why? Because in archaeological community, what important is not facts, it's not data, but an agreement.
Wow,
That's kind of shocked me.
Well, the agreement of there being some
of the story.
But I mean, if you're going to open it to the public, presumably people who are just into archaeology would come and look. And is that's a vector of getting new ideas into the public mind that I think is very difficult to control. Somebody sees something with their own eyes and they see a dig with weird artifacts.
Right.
It just sounds like they're trying to police confusion or something. They don't want chaos, right? They don't want a bunch of different narratives flying around.
You should understand that, I don't know in worldwide, but in Indonesia, most archaeologists is a social scientist. Is a social scientist, is a historian in a cultural department, not in the science department like engineering stuff. So the way they think is very different. It's very different. And they come to the sites, they have to have a story, like a solid story that this is, like the old people, how they live, and the story. So they have to get the story. So in many ways, it's not like us. If you come to the site, we just see the facts, and if you don't know the story, that's fine. But we have facts, so just different approach.
Yeah, that's really interesting that they come from. So it almost seems like they're in some sense trying to tell a story that will agree with the society that they have, that they're promoting in the present. Is that reasonable? Like, I guess what I really want to understand is why in the world you want to tell this one story about things being
a certain age. Why does it matter?
Yeah, why not tell a story about an older age? Why wouldn't it be exciting to at least entertain different stories? Some of them suggesting that the Indonesian people have this incredible legacy going back, very far. Why not tell that story? Why wouldn't that be culturally appropriate? Like, why wouldn't the state be all about that?
Yes.
Do you know?
That would be my question also.
Yeah, no idea.
No, I don't understand.
That's so bizarre.
Why?
It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
So what did you find at Gunung Padang? Can we talk about Gunung Padang?
Can I make an entry?
Shila's maintaining us on course.
Well, okay, so if we're going to go to Gunung Padang, so there's obviously a controversy around this particular site, right? So you published this paper, and it's a very, very thorough paper. Is there hundreds of pages of data in this?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, right? And so what happens, the paper comes out. I thought it would be really good if I could actually read the conclusion from the paper, because what's interesting is that or what's controversial is the paper was retracted based on the conclusions. And, if I can just get on a soapbox for a second and say that the only reason that makes any sense to retract a paper is if somebody's making up data about the site. The conclusion, as I learned it in college when I was taking my intro science classes, the conclusion exists for you to put some sort of interpretive assessment on the data where you essentially speculate about what you think the data means, right? And I've published dozens of papers myself where I do this in the conclusion section. It's not facts, it's theory. You're just laying out a possible story for what you think the data could mean. And so I just wanted to read the conclusion for people from this paper because it seems perfectly reasonable as far as conclusions in scientific papers go. And then we can move on recognizing that it was retracted because of not the data, but because of the conclusion, which I think is just a terrible travesty. So the conclusion, this is just the end of the paper, reads this. And we'll talk about the data to make sense of this in a second. This study strongly suggests that Gunung Padang is not a natural hill, but a pyramid-like construction. The pyramid's core consists of meticulously sculpted massive andesite lava. That's unit 4. And we'll talk about the different units, the layers. Enveloped by layers of rock constructions, units 3, 2, and 1. The carbon dating analysis further supports the multi-layer construction's long history spanning successive periods. The oldest construction, unit 4, likely originated it's covered up by the retraction writing, originated as a natural lava hill before being sculpted and then architecturally enveloped during the last glacial period between 25,000 and 14,000 BC. Afterwards, Gunung Padang was abandoned by the first builders for thousands of years, leading to significant weathering. Around 7,900 to 6,100 BCE, Unit 3 was deliberately buried with substantial soil fills. Approximately a millennium later, this part's covered up to between 6,000 and 5,500 BCE, a subsequent builder arrived at Gunung Padang and constructed Unit 2. Lastly, the final builder arrived between 1,000 and 1,100 BCE, constructing Unit 1. It's intriguing to note that during the construction of Unit 1, Unit 2 likely remained relatively intact and well-preserved. However, in a peculiar turn of events, Unit 2 was subsequently buried, possibly to conceal its true identity for preservation purposes. And we can talk about where else that's happened in the ancient world. As a result, Unit 2 now lies concealed beneath Unit 1, which comprises simple superficial stone terraces, or Punden Berendak, representing the last...
Punden Berundak. Yeah.
Yes, what he said, I'm sorry.
Punden
Representing
Berundak.
the latest visible manifestation of Gunung Padang. So, yeah, that's essentially the conclusion. There's a couple more paragraphs, but I assume that's the conclusion that got you in trouble with the archaeological community. And, I think I said my piece about that. I want to know what it was like for you to have done this massive work, which was, obviously a tremendous amount of labor, and then to have it published, and then to get this letter from the editors saying that we think your conclusions, all of a sudden, even though it's been peer reviewed, all of a sudden, we've gotten cold feet about these conclusions to the point that we're going to retract the paper. That must have been painful. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So it's what's that? I lost my word. It's a censorship, right? It's just a censorship. It's not really based on science, on logical science. The retraction.
Do you have a sense of who?
Yeah.
So did the editors? Do you have a sense of whether the editors themselves were all of a sudden reevaluating this, or somebody was pushing them to retract it in the archaeological community or in the state? Or do you have any idea where this pressure was coming from?
Yeah, they said there's an anonymous scientist that is not against our conclusion, our method. So it's actually it's initially begin with the post-publication critics. It's called the post-publication critics in general, but then the journal editors like I don't know why they just decided to retract our paper and email us. Then we will retract our paper, and you could make a defect.
You can fight back if you want to. You can give some arguments.
Just answer the questions, but they don't really respond to our answer also. But what like strange is even before the journal editors tell us that there will be what happened. There will be I so suddenly lost my word by.
Like before they pointed out that they were having problems with this paper?
There would be an opportunity to respond.
Yeah, it's the information about that there will be a
retraction.
It's not a retraction. They like evaluating the paper. It's been leaked first to the public through to the Nature, the articles before we know it. Before we know there's there's a problem. But then after 1 week after the article published in Nature, telling the world that our paper has a problem, has a major error, then we have an email from the journal editors, from the not from journal editors, from the publisher, relay, that there will be examination about our paper.
Oh, wow! So you heard about it from the press first.
Yes. First,
oh my God!
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah.
So yes, is there not like a back and forth that happens with retractions?
Well, apparently they leaked it to Nature News or whoever it was that reported on it first. Is what he's saying, I believe.
Sure, but I'm surprised that you publish a paper that the journal accepts after peer review, then a group of archaeologists, including Flint Dibble is associated with this. Reaches out to make sure that the paper retracts the article. But I always thought that there was a commentary period where you were able to justify why you thought that it didn't need to be retracted. Like, is it not a back and forth? It's just a decision that they unilaterally make?
No, it's a back and forth. They just give us the critics from that anonymous people to us. So we answered that question like a few times, and we answered that very thoroughly. We explained to them that there is nothing wrong with our paper, and what they thought is not based on science. Yeah, but we never get the response from the journal editors or from the people who critiques our paper. So they just ask us to answer some questions, and at the end they said, "Well, I heard you, but we still decided to retract your paper." Period.
All right, so I think it would be interesting before we get into what the critics were upset about, if we could just talk about the study that you did and what you actually found, because I read the conclusions, but maybe you could talk about how you came to those conclusions. So what were the trenching projects? What was it like to show up at this place? What brought you into this discussion in the first place? Let's go all the way back to the beginning of your interest in Gunung Padang and really understand the work that you did there first then we'll talk about the critics.
So the Gunung Padang Hill is like 200-meter height, actually. It's rising from the base. But the one that has been modified is only upper part of the hills. It's like several meters, like 30 meters from the top. So it's not the entire hills. So most of the hill is still natural hills. That's what sometimes people is not confused about that. So if we come to Gunung Padang, we can even see from the surface, from the outcrops there, it's not just one phase, but two phases, Unit 1 and Unit 2. Unit 1 is the youngest and Unit 2 is the oldest. So basically, if you come to the site, you can see that the Unit 2 is actually the main structures there. The Unit 1 is only modification of the surface from the Unit 2. Unit 2 like form the floor of the terrace 1. We call it terrace 1, that's in the north, and then the high wall of between terrace 1 and terrace 2 and stuff. So the Unit 2 is only like covering the surface of the Unit 1, covering Unit 2. And Unit 2 is that the layers that has been dated 7,500 to 8,000 years old. So if just so what the retraction said and what people said that Unit 2 is a natural geological rocks, which is absolutely not. It's very obvious. People still can see it now in the surface. In the site is a megalithic site, is a man-made structures, right? So if people just agree on that Unit 2 is the man-made structures, then that's enough for us, because then the archaeological works there is not finished yet. They have to dig that Unit 2 until they find the natural layers.
I just want to see if I can pull a picture here of these layers that we're talking about here. I think this one is pretty good.
You see that figure 3 looking at that. That's right. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so can you tell us what we're looking at here?
Yeah, is this the surface? This is Unit 1 that we're looking at?
Unit 1 is that the one that's standing rocks and making spaces, like a space. Unit 2 is that the high wall that we can see that. The high wall
up here in the
made
center.
by coconut chain rocks.
So you're saying that there's these three temporal units, Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3. Unit 3 is the
Unit 3.
deepest and the oldest. And then Unit 1...
But it's also exposed though. Unit 3 is also exposed.
Okay, I see. So is
in
there...
the hill and the slope.
And so the reason that it's exposed is because it's terraced and the terraces have worn away, and so you can
west
see...
slope, there are ancient landslide.
I see.
Ancient landslide that exposed the rocks. And also, when we dig the trench in the southern part of the hill, we can find that Unit 3 only 3 meters beneath the ground surface.
Okay, so this hill
they're all
has
exposed.
significantly changed over the course of geologic time. What is the history? I'm saying that the hill itself has significantly changed since something was built there. And so if Unit 3 is just a few feet from the surface in places, then that means that the huge quantities of rock have been removed in order to expose it. Right?
Unit 3 and Unit 2 is the construction. So the geometrical construction of the structures beneath the ground is not simple, I would say. It's a bit complicated. So what I'm saying is the human-made layers that cover Gunung Padang is only like 20 to 30 meters thick layers, comprising Unit 3 and Unit 2 mainly, and Unit 1 is only. So the red one is the natural rock. It's a massive andesite basaltic intrusion that has been carved and then enveloped by that green and yellow layers, which is Unit 3 and Unit 2. But the green one is also exposed on the west side of the slope, the west slope. And also it's exposed under our trenching also.
Now, why did you think that this Unit 4 was shaped by people?
It has to be shaped before that the green layers put in there on that red one, and also there are chambers on the red layers, on the intrusive layers. There are also structures. The chambers that are probably man-made chambers over there, and we have very lots of images on that from the GPR, from the resistivity tomography, from the seismic tomography also. So we could analyze the detail of the geometry of the red one of the Unit 4. So we know it has been modified. So like this one here.
So like the tunnel, as it says here, is part of
There's
this.
a tunnel. Looks like it. Yeah.
potentially.
So we combine that resistivity tomography, and we also have the seismic tomography. So we can combine two methods that could independently, so we could see how they confirm each other.
So I guess I still don't totally understand why does layer 4 need to be shaped before layer 3 can be overlaid with it?
Well, it'd be very hard to put the building on the layers that has not been modified, but that's still a hypothesis, right? If we'd like to know that the truth, we have just to dig them, right? And it doesn't matter if it's not really modified. And you also have to see that the one that we are talking about, the one that imaged the Gunung Padang hill, it's only in upper part of the hills, only like 1/5 maybe, not the entire hill. Yeah.
So you're digging these trenches right down to these different layers, and you are analyzing the sediment inside of those, right? And what do you find? What is this the picture that comes about in your conclusions section? Is you start seeing these really old dates of some of this soil down on those deeper layers?
Yeah, our study has the lots of data from our digging, from the trenching, and from surface observations. Also, we have lots of data identifying where the unit 1, where unit 2, unit 3 also, and we have the detailed geometry of the unit 2 and unit 3 layers from GPR, and also we have data from the well. From the core logging also, the layers that could correlate also from the geophysical. So we found many things, like artifacts also. We found lots of artifacts in Unit 2 and Unit 3 also, stone artifacts.
Like what?
One of the most intriguing is that Kujang stone on the paper. And we also put other artifacts on the supplementary figures also. There are many of them, that the small shape stones that doesn't look like the natural shape, but it's shaped by human. Like in one stone that has a unique shape, and there is a cut mark, a cut mark from the sharp, like from a sharp knife, something like that. And we also find between the columnar joint, there's a flat rocks also that they put in between them to strengthening the structures. So there are lots of evidence of the human works there on the layers.
The Kujang stone, from what I saw, it basically is this really
it's on the paper.
Interesting. It kind of looks like a dagger. It has a hilt to it. I've spent a lot of time. I've seen a lot of basalt artifacts, and basalt is hard to work, and tends to look like the other pieces that you found in Gunung Padang, which is these long rectangular columns. I've never seen a piece of basalt that looks like this without it being worked.
No.
Did you find a lot of these, or is this the only one that you found?
No, there are several things that looks like it, but this is the perfect one. You also even have a bigger one, much bigger, like that.
Interesting.
And it's funny though, it's like columnar joint, but it's like bend 90 degrees. So
are you surprised?
Columnar joints.
Are you surprised that there isn't more ornamentation on the rocks that are buried? Because I was struck by that as I was looking through the paper, where the rocks look arranged. Right, they're not just randomly, just some jumble of objects. There's a couple trenches that you opened where they literally look like they've been stacked like logs. There's order to the site. Okay, so why aren't they carved? Like, why aren't there designs on them?
Why are they carved stones?
No, why aren't they carved?
Why are there not
if you
art?
If you go to Göbekli Tepe, you have serpents and birds and feathers. You go to the Olmecs and you have the heads. The Maya have their delicate hieroglyphs. Why do you think that all the stones are bare here?
In talking about the human carve, there's lots of carving on the stones, but we just have to work on that more closely because we have to differentiate between what naturals and which one is the like human-made symbols. There are lots of things like a dent on the rocks, the hemispherical shape, the dent, like a bowl stuff. They are everywhere on the rocks, So, and there are also some carving that's very interesting. But if you are talking about like a statues, of course we couldn't find statue unless if we could dig into the chambers. Maybe we could find one. Is that what you mean? I'm not really sure.
Yeah. I mean ornamentation.
Yeah.
I mean statues. I mean decorations. I mean the sorts of things that you find at Göbekli Tepe on the T-shaped pillars.
Yeah, there's different sides. Göbekli Tepe is the statues. That's the main thing. But this is the structures, like a pyramid structures. But as I said, we haven't really dig that into the chambers. We just dig it 5% of.
Yeah, I think if I could shine a little light on this, it seems like there's a central crisis here where there isn't a lot of work going on at this site relative to these other ones. Like for some reason, this controversy aside, it seems like it hasn't gotten the attention from the archaeological community that it deserves, which is really interesting because I was on Reddit earlier just reading about, people's evaluations and what people were thinking about the retraction and everything. And there were several really sane people who were just like, who cares? Why don't we study this thing? Why are we talking about what it isn't? And why don't we actually try to find out what it is?
Absolutely.
And for some reason, it seems like there's just not been a lot of work there since this study. Is that correct?
Yeah, the main goal, I would think, of the retraction and all other critics is to stop the research.
So sad.
Yeah, because of the retraction, then I couldn't propose to our government, our institute to continue the research. They said, well, it has been retracted, then you are wrong. See?
Wow. I wanted to know more about the history of the site where Gunung Padang was found. How long have people thought that there was a pyramid there?
It's not a pyramid. The site is found in 1850 by geologists. They thought it's only a old cemetery on top of the hill. And then it's been revisited by archaeologists in 1907. And then also confirming it's just the old cemetery on top of the hill. But then it seems that there is no study to follow up that finding until 1979. 1979, the local people reported to the government there are something on the hills. And then begin in 1979, 1980, the archaeologists working on that site and uncover the punden berundak, the rock terraces on top of the hill. So that's it until we found we conduct the study there in 2011, and what we found is not just the rock terraces in the surface. Even in the surface, it's not just one face, but there are two faces, unit 1 and unit 2, and also beneath it is underground. It's still layers, human-made layers, down to 20 meters deep. So it's a big structures. It's a big human-made structures to Gunung Padang.
What attracted you to the site, I guess, is maybe the right question. Did you hear any rumors that maybe there was something more to it than just a cemetery on a hill? Or were you just trying to add more information to the cemetery on the hill? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not the cemetery at all. After the archaeological site, it's the thing is a place for the religious, ceremonial religious things there. And also the local people believe so. It's the heritage of the ancestors for religious ceremonial on top of the hill.
When you arrived at Gunung Padang in 2011, Did you
Yeah.
suspect that it was a much older structure?
What we suspect in the first time, we see that the Gunung Padang Hill, from our image, the higher resolution topography, and from our observation, the landscape, it's younger. It looks younger than the surrounding mountains, which is heavily eroded and has head erosion up to the top of the rock. But the Gunung Padang is really like young. It's uneroded, just on the upper part of the hills, and there's a megalithic site on top. So that's what interested me. So that is why I conducted geophysical surveys to see what's in it, what is underground. So what we found is very interesting. It doesn't look like natural. So that's our suspicion in the first place.
Were you the first person to think there might be something underground?
Yes.
Wow.
I am.
That's fascinating.
So you said that they thought that it was a cemetery. Had they ever found a body there?
No, it's not cemetery. And the archaeologists also agreed it's not cemetery.
I see.
But there are an ancient cemetery not far from that, but it's not that old. It's
I
like
see.
several hundred years ago.
And so do you think that there's other hills like Gunung Padang in the area? Or do you think that this was the only one?
Oh, there are some other similar sites not far from Gunung Padang. It's like, 60 to 70 kilometers. And it looks like more pyramids, like pyramid shape with all that rock terraces also. But it hasn't really explored. There's no data on that. There's no age. There's no comprehensive surveys. And there are several other things, the megalithic sites surrounding Gunung Padang, also rock terraces. So it's not the only one. There are many of them in the site and also all over Indonesia. But they just has not been studied, explored yet comprehensively. So.
And so if the oldest unit at Gunung Padang is dated to 27,000 years ago, who were the people there that were building it?
Yeah, the minimum age of that is like 16,000, right? We don't know how old is that. So it's back to the Ice Age. Whose people? Well, we don't know, yeah. We could speculate, but we don't know.
Well, so with something like Göbekli Tepe, we don't really know who those people were.
That's right. Yeah, same.
But I think they're probably related to the Sumerians.
Sumerian, that's what people would like to relate from Göbekli Tepe, then move to Sumerian, right? Yeah.
It kind of seems reasonable, right? You have a group of people, they're getting together, they're like building complex things.
Yeah.
Several thousand years pass. I think there's 5,000 years between Göbekli Tepe and Sumeria. And so, okay.
Lots of sites around Göbekli Tepe that haven't been excavated too.
But so what the line that I'm trying to draw here is if Göbekli Tepe represents the earliest stirrings of the culture that eventually becomes Sumeria, do you think that Gunung Padang represents the early stirrings of a culture that becomes the Polynesians? If there are people there, they're a precursor to someone else?
Yes, of course. So the people who built Gunung Padang will be the same period as the people who built the Göbekli Tepe, right? Well, the archaeologist's interpretation of the Göbekli Tepe is like the advanced structures that built by hunter and gatherer, the simple people, which I really had to believe that. What I believe is that the Göbekli Tepe is built by people, but the survivors of the people, the survivors that survived the catastrophic that destroyed all that civilization. So that's the reminding of the ancient cultures in the Ice Age. That's what my interpretation is. So the Mesopotamia, even the Sumerian, is like the remaining cultures from the Ice Age, which still thriving through our civilization. But as you know, the Sumerian cultures also, it didn't come to us. It's also lost, right? It's not really connected to our civilization. It's been lost also.
We still use the 60 minutes. That's the only thing that I can find in our society from Sumeria. They still have the 360-degree circle. That was their idea.
Which suggests...
So if you talk about...
Go ahead.
Yeah. If you talk about the cultures in Gunung Padang, it's very hard to say that because there is no comprehensive studies on megalithic sites in Indonesia. If we have studied like the megalithic sites in Central Sulawesi, megalithic sites in Central Sumatra, and other things, lots of them, then we might be able to connect the culture from the very ancient Ice Age through the period of our, earlier civilization in about 12 to 11,000 years ago. I would believe that the granites, megalithic sites in Central Sulawesi, from the weathering degrees and from the shape, will be the same age as Göbekli Tepe, I think. But we still, we need studies. We need further studies to find the stories.
Is that just a matter of money? Like there isn't enough of a priority on, reconstructing this lost history?
Yeah, is most of the money from the Indonesian government?
Yes, in terms of fund, the money for research, including archaeology, is very small. And the other things, I think, for the archaeology, until now, it's only done mostly by conventional archaeologists who has different method, right? A very conventional method, just digging. Hasn't applied the method that I am applying from earth science, the advanced method. So that's the two things. We have to find money, and we apply the latest methods, multidisciplinary methods to explore that things. Like right now, I have the data, very interesting data from the multi-beam survey from the ocean, showing there are sunken harbor, really a sunken harbor, like 5 kilometers wide. Now it's like 60 meters below the sea level in Sunda Strait, in Java Sea. And I have talked to people to explore that because it's very interesting. It really looks like a sunken harbor. The data is come from my friend who do the multi-beam survey for making a bridge between Sumatra and Java at that time, like 10 years ago. There's a plan to make a bridge between Java and Sumatra throughout the Sunda Strait. So they're doing a very detailed multi-beam surveys. And yeah, it's very interesting. We found that sunken harbor. So there are many things to be explored. Yeah.
Did you excavate the harbor?
It's 60 meters below the sea level.
Well, I mean, there's underwater archaeology.
It's very expensive.
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. That's what I would like to propose. Now we also making a proposal. I work with other people who archaeologists actually who has an experience in marine exploration, and I hope we could get a research grant to do that.
That would be super cool.
I hope.
I always like to point out that the Venn diagram of divers and archaeologists has a very tiny overlap, I imagine.
Did they ever build the bridge that they were planning through the Sunda Strait?
No, not yet, because the last president, we just has a new president now. The last one didn't want to continue the plan. Maybe the new president will continue that. I don't know.
Because as Shaila was pointing out earlier, that when excavations happen, that's often when new details become discovered, new sites are
during
found.
Like construction, civic.
Yeah, exactly. Excavations for constructions. Yeah,
especially in Europe. Yeah, it seems like. But hey, we didn't. I want to make sure that we like put a bow on Gunung Padang because we didn't circle back and see what the critics were so upset about, and can you tell us I know this is a painful subject. I'm sorry to put you through this, but I really want to know
No problem.
what was their argument? Because from what I can gather, they didn't believe that the soil was a good surrogate marker for the age of the site. Why did they think that?
No, it's not that. If you read the retraction notice, it said that our carbon dating method is not valid because it's not related to anthropological stuff or human-made structures, right? But our date is related to Unit 1, Unit 2, and Unit 3. So the problem is not with the dating, but because they saying that Unit 1, Unit 2, and Unit 3 are natural geological rock formation.
Oh, wow.
Not the man-made structures. That is the main things that's debating.
So they don't believe that 1, 2. They're not even worried about 4. They're talking about 1, 2, and 3. They think are just natural, and there's that all of that stoneworking is wow. Okay, I didn't understand that. Does that make sense?
If you read the retraction notice, it will say that Unit 1, Unit 2, and Unit 3 is all natural rocks.
I see. Oh my God.
And also after that, they said that then my conclusion that then their conclusion about the pyramids more older than 9,000 years old is wrong. So they are just targeting the things that older than 9,000. So at that time, I also asked them back. So if you think that the man-made structures, the 9,000 or older is wrong, that means Unit 1 and Unit 3 are fine. That's what I'm asking them, right? Because Unit 2 is only 7,500 to 8,000 years old.
No answer.
So the retraction notice is very strange statement if you read that. So.
And I think that that's unfair because I'm very skeptical about data in general. I come to scientific papers almost always with skepticism. But to say that there isn't evidence of human activity seems absurd. There's stones, there's these basalt columns that are etched with lines. There's the Kujang stone. There's many different modifications of the rocks that doesn't look like it could have happened naturally. And yes, there's no carvings, and yes, there's no pottery, but it does seem like it wasn't just the weathering of stone. These things look etched, they look cut, they look assembled.
They do, yeah. I'm curious why they think that. Why do they not think that at least 1, 2, and 3? I mean, you can see the pictures in your paper. We showed some earlier of 1, 2, and 3. They. I'm not an archaeologist, but like they look like people made them to me. Why do these experts not think so? Do you have any sense of why they don't think that? I just don't get it.
Because it's not much expert that come to Gunung Padang and see for themselves. They just read the gossips in mass media, the rumors, and the retraction. Yeah. So if they say that the Unit 2 or Unit 3 are geological rocks, they should at least say that what kind of geological rocks are there?
Yeah.
Are they natural rock formation? Are they natural columnar joint formation? They are not. I am geologist. I know what natural geological rocks are. So they don't say that. So they just said it's not natural rocks, but what's then? What type of rocks are there?
That's a really
so if
good
it's
point.
not a geological rocks, then what? So even if you couldn't find any like carving or whatever, but still I could say that there are not geological rocks that are not, the rocks are geological rocks, but the arrangement are not natural anymore. It's a man-made arrangement.
Wow. Okay. So the entire disagreement comes down to whether or not you think that those rocks are placed by humans or not. And that is very subjective, which is exactly what a conclusion section is for, as far as I'm concerned. That's what I learned, anyways, in college. That's what I've been doing all these years, and so that's a real tragedy. So I don't know. We don't have to beat on this anymore. I do. I kind of want to hear about. You have this theory that you've been nurturing about linear versus cyclical models of civilization.
Right.
That sounds really interesting to me because
yeah,
Nasti and I have been reading some interesting
Right.
books lately and discussing them on the show regarding this narrative that we've inherited about civilization. Like since we were little kids, we were told that, you know, people are in these tribes and then they form some agriculture eventually and then they have civilization. And it's like this one-way linear story. And I'm wondering, well, we've found many of counterexamples, including Stonehenge people, but many others where that doesn't seem to be quite so simple. And so what's your idea about what's this linear versus cyclical model that you've been thinking about?
Yeah, it's funny though. I developed this idea about the cycles of cultures in 2011, 2012. That based on my background as geologists. Geologists like see the natural processes as cycles. All the natural processes are cycles. The earthquake cycles, the volcanic eruption cycles, the sedimentary cycles, all the cycles. And also the living on Earth also is cycles, like on the Mesozoic time, we have the saurus, the dinosaurs, the brontos and stuff, all that giant creatures. And then it's wiped out by the meteorite impact. And then they're gone. And on the next period, it changed to the mammals and other stuff, and then come to some kind of monkey, and then goes to us, evolves to us, right? Something like that. So the life also always changed. And then when we look into the age of the Homo sapiens, it's 200,000 years old, right? According to the fossils and also the DNA research, that the DNA research shows that all the DNA is human in the world now, pointing out to the two DNA, the Adam and Eve DNA, at about 150,000 years. So it's confirming each other that the age of the Homo sapiens is like 200,000. And the age of the Homo Neanderthal, which is like us also, or Denisovan, is even older, right? So I'm hard to believe that the human civilization is only 11,000 years old. It's just too young. So where all that has gone. So, and all the religion, all the many myths also talking about these cycles of civilization. But what I'm surprised is when I first read the Plato's manuscript, the Timaeus and Critias. That's in 2012, I would say. I read that manuscript, and I'm really shocked because Plato has said that cycles of cultures, the cycles of civilization, because of the global disasters. And Plato said in the manuscript, the apocalypse, the agent of the apocalypse is two things: fire and water. And if we connect to the historical geology, it's even become more interesting because I know in the period of human history from 200,000 years old to us, there are two global catastrophic events. One is the Toba supervolcano eruption, 74,000 years old ago, and then the Younger Dryas. I know lots of debate on the Younger Dryas, but we see lots of evidence of the mass extinction, not passing to the Younger Dryas. But so that's fire, Toba, and Younger Dryas, water. So
at the very least, the sea levels were changing
yeah,
wildly after the last glaciation
right.
cycle, even if you forget about it.
So you're asking who's the man who has the idea of the cycles of civilization? It is Plato in Timaeus and Critias, 400 BCA already talk about that. And if you read the manuscript carefully, Plato said that it's not from us. This is not my story, but I got that from the very old manuscript that given to me, to his grandfather, actually, to Solon, from the Egypt priest, right? Plato. So So that's about.
Yeah,
but
it's so hard to interpret those things when you read these references. Because Plato also wrote a bit about Atlantis, right? And it's very difficult to, different scholars, even in the centuries after him, were taking, some of it was taken literally. Some of the philosophers that were his students thought that he was just making an allegory out of it. It's very difficult to say, right? Because when you have these oral traditions, oftentimes the most sensational stories are the ones that get passed on. And so it's very difficult to pick out fact from fiction with respect to that. But yeah, I totally agree with you, though, that it's pretty bizarre that we would be around for 200,000 years and then all of a sudden in the last, 1% of that time, we would all of a sudden, or less, we would just start building stonework cities, like all of a sudden.
Agriculture.
Never thought of that.
Agriculture.
Very, very bizarre.
Yeah.
Not to mention that there was an ice age. A glaciation, and the Earth was wildly different back then. And certainly, it was catastrophic to anybody who was living near the ocean. And it's worth pointing out that human beings love living near the ocean. Like, we still mostly live near the ocean. And if you look at the sites of the oldest human beings, we were talking about, like, the oldest human being skeletons, all found near the ocean, all in caves near the ocean. It's like, there's a really reasonable case to be made that humans are water monkeys, essentially. We really like living by the water. There's lots of food there. You're protected on one side, essentially. You can swim around. There's just like a really good case to be made that, okay, so we're living near the ocean. What do you think happens after the glacial period? Well, everything is gone because it's 300 feet underwater all of a sudden. And then, all of the flood stories start to make a lot of sense. So it doesn't really surprise me that we don't find those cities necessarily. Even if they did exist, I wouldn't expect that they would be obvious. Like, the ocean is a real destroyer. It's very difficult to have anything survive getting eaten by the sea.
But we found lots of, like, magnificent structures in South America, right? Long bridges, thousands of pyramids and other structures like Chiswaman that made by really huge rock and made perfectly, like, locking each other, something like that. But what my point is, we could not, explain how they did it, how they built that. Even us, it's very difficult to do that, right? So I think the sign is everywhere. We're just denying them. Even on the megalithic site in megalithic statue, the granite statue in Sulawesi that I found, one of the statue could be like 10 tons, and it's very carved, very, very precisely. And one of the the granite, lots of the granite is called the kalamba. It's like a cylinder like that, but made by granite. The diameter is like 3 meters in diameter, and the granite is carved very beautifully, perfectly cylinders, and the center of it is also carved like this, very smoothly. This is granite we're talking about. It's 3 meters in diameter. How could we carve that in our time? It's very difficult.
I couldn't do it, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think that there's evidence for there being a lot of stuff that we haven't figured out yet. And a little bit of humility would go a long way, because the world is very big, and the number of archaeological sites that we have A, found, and B, surveyed fully is minuscule. Yeah. And like you said, so you see the signs of a harbor that's underwater. You can't dig it out. You can't do an excavation because it's so expensive and it's so difficult. And so much of that land was above sea level at some point that we're missing, like a quarter of the planet's surface, probably, because it's
especially in Indonesia. I think that's really key to this discussion. Is this? I don't know if people know about Sundaland, so maybe we've been talking around Sundaland a lot in this conversation, but maybe it's worth pointing out that Indonesia is the island remains of a much bigger plateau that was exposed during the last glaciation, right?
Right.
So when all that water was tied up in those ice sheets, it uncovered a huge swath of land. And so Indonesia wasn't just this island place a mere, 12,000 years ago? That's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even right now, Gunung Padang is really, really far above sea level. We're talking almost 3,000 feet above sea level. Is that accurate?
Yes, right.
So that's
1,000 meters. Yeah.
So that if you drop sea levels even further, another 500 feet, as they're supposed to be during the glaciation, this site just ends up being unbelievably far from water, unbelievably hard to get to. And so the fact that it's built suggests that there's something much larger that isn't being seen because it's just this
tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
It's just the tip of the entire civilization that's down there.
But there's a big river that goes from the shore, from the ocean to Gunung Padang. So people could sail the big boat from the sea to Gunung Padang.
Oh, really? Big boats?
Yeah.
It seems like
I think so. In the past, now it's not. It's difficult, but the river is big. It's the main river in West Java. One of the main river. It's called Cimandiri River.
It would make sense to me that you would probably only put a ceremonial site at this really difficult to get to location, right? Like let's assume that your conclusion is correct, and this is a very ancient site on top of this mountain. There must have been a much wider set of constructions in a much more convenient location. It seems like this place is too far out of the way for it to really be the center of of whatever society was occurring at that time period. It would have just been much easier to just fish or live on the lowlands, maybe do some, I don't know, whatever the heck people did 20,000 years ago, herding or whatever industries. I don't know. I have no idea what 20,000-year-old people did all day long.
No, we don't.
Yeah, but probably somewhere much more convenient than on top of a mountain.
Yeah. But 20,000 years ago, the Java Sea would be a very, very lovely place to live.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because major river is like a Nile River now, like Nile River, but in the Ice Age. Yeah, and the stream comes from Kalimantan, from Sumatra, from Java, streaming through the lowland area. Now it's Java Sea that has been much like 120 meters. So we still see that the river, the branch of the river of that big river now that's under the sea, right, in Java and Sumatra and Kalimantan. That would be the center of the civilization. But of course, there will be some people living in the mountains area, of course. Yeah.
Or at least in many sites, I've only been to the ones in Mesoamerica, but I know in Greece also, oftentimes there are pilgrimages to these holy sites where part of the experience is doing this very difficult trek to the mountain to visit this temple. That seems like a similar thing could have been happening in Indonesia. What sort of artifacts? All right, so let's play with the idea that there was a wider culture that was buried underneath the sea in the lowlands. Would any artifacts remain to this day if we could, let's say we got $1 billion to go do a bunch of scuba diving and uncover these sites? What would we possibly find? Only rocks, or would we be able to find something else?
We will find lots of things. I have one other data. One of my friends who work in the oil company, oil exploration in Gulf of Thailand. So where they conduct the 3D seismic exploration there. Usually the 3D seismic data for oil exploration, they only process the data that really like deep, like from, 1,000 kilometers, 1 kilometer to the deeper, because looking for the oil reservoir. But one of the company geologists interested in this archaeological stuff. So they process that 3D seismic, the shallow one, like from the bottom of the sea to like several hundred meters beneath it. And what we see from the data, we could slice that data. This is a 3D seismic, so we could slice what's in it. So the first slice showing the ancient river on the Gulf of Thailand, a big river like Niles. But the other slice showing the irrigation system, like rectangular water system. That's now like 100 meter
aqueducts or something, or for irrigating fields.
Yeah. In the seismic 3D, you see that rectangular water canal. Lots of them in the vast area. It's not river. Yeah. So
how deep?
100 meter below the sea level.
Wow.
So if we go to the sea level history, that means it has to be more than like 12,000 years old.
That's amazing.
Irrigation system. So there are lots of things we could look into that.
Yeah.
And you look at, if we talking about the artifact in Indonesia, there are lots of interesting artifacts that has not been studied yet. One of my friends, like a team of them, collecting many iron, very special iron, and also meteorite, that the weapons that are built from meteorite rocks and also from very special metal like Greece now. So it's very special metal. It's very, very strong. And the size of that weapons, like a blade and also the trident, lots of trident. The weapon of the Poseidon, the gods. There are lots of them in Indonesia. Yeah, and one of my colleagues are collecting them. So,
how many has he found?
Well, not mine, but he collected like several tens of them.
But they're not forged, right? So you cannot date them. They're carved from some they're reworked metal.
It would not be easy to date meteorite rocks and irons.
Yeah.
Not easy, but I think we could. We have to find the original location where it found, so we could date other things surrounding that artifacts. But he got the artifacts from people who found that in the nature, in the wild. So
I see. So there's just tridents being found in the woods in Indonesia?
There are many tridents in different sizes.
That's wild.
Do people use them for hunting, or they're just for fighting each other? Nobody knows.
Well, it's carved very, very good. I don't think it's for hunting because it's like carving. It's very nice carving.
I see, like almost ceremonial.
Could be, or weapon.
Wow, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
Your friend with the survey who was noting the potential for these irrigation systems. Is he going to publish that, or has he been scared off by your experience publishing?
I have the data. Maybe I will publish it.
Yeah, do it
in the future, of course.
Yeah.
Together with that sunken harbor. Yeah.
Cool.
That would be very cool.
You're undaunted. You're brave. You're not scared off.
I hope I will not get killed.
Oh, jeez, me too. Hopefully they won't retract it. Yeah. So what about the future for you? What are you excited about? Like, you talk about maybe publishing these papers. Are you going to keep studying archaeology, or do you think that you'll be working more?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So like right now, I'm still like most of the time still been occupied by earthquake research because I still lead this research in Indonesia. If I go, then they will be in trouble. My colleague is still it still need me to do that. So for the next 5 years, I will still be doing lots of the earthquake research stuff. But I think step by step, I will be moving to this geoarchaeology stuff, the archaeometry. Like right now, we are planning with friends in Singapore, in Malaysia, and other international to make the center. We call it the Archaeometry Center, the ASEAN Archaeometry Research Center. So what we would like to do with this center, we will that also, collecting the fund from philanthropy from the crowd, for example. But what we'll do is we will do the archaeological surveys, like all that interesting ancient sites, with multidisciplinary methods. We will be applying the advanced technology, and also we'll be applying like the marine crews to see what's in the bottom of the sea, like that harbor, sunken harbor stuff. So we'll see if it comes right. Then I could, like shifting my research from earthquake to this ancient stuff.
Is the earthquake stuff focused on predicting when the next earthquake will happen? Is there any element of that?
No, we are not focusing on the short prediction. We said it's short prediction when, but we are more researching the long prediction to making the seismic hazard map to mitigate the the long-term mitigation, and also from the seismic hazard map we develop, then we could also make the building codes for the earthquake resistant structures. Yeah, like right now I'm still the head of the geological team who make that seismic hazard map for Indonesia, so it's still busy.
I see. So you look at what's happened in the past and then try to be ready for if it happens in the future.
Yeah. We are evaluating all that earthquake sources from the active faults, including like how frequent the earthquakes occurred in every active fault, in every earthquake source, and the probability of the earthquake occurrence in the future. So from that we could make a zonation of the seismic hazard map for all the areas. That's saying on this location, the chance of having the earthquake shaking up to what level, certain levels, is there. So any construction of houses that built on this area, that has to be built to resist that shaking. And also, after we map that active faults, then we could tell people not to build the houses or big construction on the fault line, just like what we do in California, for example. No one building the house like right on the San Andreas fault, right? Because it's too dangerous.
Except for Nastia's parents.
Yeah.
her parents literally live on about 500 meters away from the seismic fault.
It quite literally goes through their backyard. It's not the San Andreas fault.
We go hiking on the fault.
We do. And you can tell because it's the hills are all around us. And then when you go hiking, there's just one chasm that goes very deep.
Yeah, that might be the last hike we take one day.
Hopefully not. But I don't know. It's really cool stuff. I really hope that over the course of the next few years, you manage to grow a community of people that are all coming at it from the same direction. And so I wonder if you have those people already. Are there other archaeologists from around the world that are dedicated to finding these older civilizations, or is that still very much...
Or non-archaeologists?
Or no? Well, it's harder with non-archaeologists because at the end of the day, you're trying to publish a paper. And
have you thought about writing a book instead of a paper? Like, I wonder if a book wouldn't be a better format for this kind of stuff. If there's ideological reasons why you can't publish these ideas, why not just, skip it?
Yeah. Actually, like a couple of weeks ago, I have a discussion with my archaeologists and on the same office and talking about that. And some of them is very appreciative. And they said, why don't making that book, not the paper? And I think it will be a good idea. I just need to find the time to make that book.
I think it's a good idea.
But I will. in the
But
future.
there's a long history of these sorts of ideas making their way into the popular consciousness outside of academic channels. And I think academics often rely very heavily on those channels because their livelihood depends on it. You have to get grants and you have to publish and you have to do all of these different things in order to get your career secured. But with ancient archaeology, there's just such a huge passion for it all around the world. I imagine that it would do very well. And you write very beautifully. For a very detailed,
Thank you.
for a very detailed geology paper, it's beautifully written.
It's really challenged me. It took like several months. I have to sit on the chairs and analyzing all that huge data. GPR, residue tomography, seismic tomography, from the trenching, from the core logging, and it's like I end up like 100 pictures, and I would think, how could I put it under one paper? So it struggles to put all that data into one paper, but still I have to make a supplementary figures like 100 pages. But yeah.
Do you think that there's anything that can be done to convince people that the objects at Gunung Padang are man-made?
Tier 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, that the rocks there are man-made? Or do you think that there's no piece of evidence that you can show?
Yeah, what would it take to convince them, do you think?
Well, I hope that in the near future, the people who doesn't believe in it, the archaeologists, would like to come with me to Gunung Padang and discuss it on the site and what's wrong. What's wrong with that? Because all the people, geologists, archaeologists, all the people who come to Gunung Padang with me to the site and discuss it directly in the site, I don't have really much argument on that. We all agree that it's a man-made structures. I don't know. So it's
just kind of funny that people wouldn't be interested in at least going and seeing what's up. Like that, right. I hope that you're right and that you can convince some of the skeptics to actually come out there with you and go through it and point out what about it is unappealing as a human artifact. Because
and also tell people, if you are serious, like to my government also, to the office, you should like make like independent team, combine experts in archaeologists and geologists, and really make the examination of the Gunung Padang. So,
like the sort of unbiased, like dispassionate approach. Like assemble some people to actually go out and make sense of it.
That's right. Yeah. If you look into Unit 2, that is the key, because Unit 2 is it's now the shape form as a floor of terraces, wall and terraces. So even if people is not geologists, it's not rock, whether natural or not, they shape like that. They shape like the structures. So if it's a natural rocks, that means they have to cut it instead of arrange it, but it has to be cut. That even become even more impossible that way. So,
I mean, I think you're in good company. There's ample history of people who are chasing down these leads, and they were treated very poorly by the community. Who was the guy who did Troy? What's that guy's name? Heinrich Schliemann or something like that? We
have the history of that. Do you know that the Altamira cave painting? Altamira in North Spain, that found by Marcelino, is an archaeologist in 1880. So when he published it in 1880, there's an ancient cave painting as old as 10,000 years old. There are all the senior archaeologists and also the church condemn him. Like, you are stupid, you are wrong, right? You heard that, right? It's been filmed by Antonio Banderas, I think, the actors, right? So he's been like,
there's
his career is like
a docudrama, there's like a movie with Antonio Banderas.
It's a movie.
Wow,
it's a movie.
Watch that.
It's a great movie. The title is Altamira. Yeah. So
cool.
So
he's the archaeologist.
Until he died, he's been rejected by the community. But after he died, one senior archaeology then visit the site. So before that, there's no one else visit the site. But after he died, the senior archaeologist visit the site and then confirm it's really a man-made painting. It's like an ancient painting. So
tragic.
That's what happened in Altamira. Now we know that the Altamira cave is not 10,000, but is 16,000 years old, even older. But the cave painting in Indonesia, in South Sulawesi, is even much older. It's 52,000 years minimum age of the cave painting.
Altamira cave paintings right now are thought to be up to 36,000 years.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. That's the new age, 36. So that guy is wrong. It's not that young.
So what are the ones in Indonesia that you said are even older? Do they have a name?
Yeah. In Maros, South Sulawesi, Maros, cave painting. If you type Maros, it will come up because it has been published in Nature.
Mm. Oh, so I see some of these, yeah.
Minimum age is 52,000. And one of my colleagues is an artist, and is a painting artist from university, the professor. He also researched that cave, and he said that the painting on the cave is really, really high art. And he said that even my PhD student will be very hard to paint that cave that way. So
you think that they were taller?
What was that?
You think they were taller? You said that they're high up, like the people that painted.
No. The painting on the cave is in high art. It's not a simple art, but it's very difficult to paint. To draw that painting. So my professor in the art department said that even his PhD student, it will be difficult to do the paintings like they did 50,000 years ago. Mm. But that's the minimum age, though. It should be older than that. Yeah,
that's crazy. I'm looking at them right now. They're so worn away. They're almost, and you can see that they're there. But it must have been so difficult to even catch the site. And so
there are like more than 100 caves there, and it's only a few of them has been explored. So
what I love is how chunky these pigs are. You can see this little drawing of the pig. It's this like big little fat creature.
Right.
What is happening here? But yeah,
there's
that's
a boat painting also. It's not that. There's a boat also painted in the cave.
A boat?
A boat, yeah.
From 50. Oh, so wait a second. Is the boat painting also dated to the same 50,000 years ago?
I would say so, because the painting style and the materials for painting is just the same. And beside that boat, there are lots of that hands stuff. Mm. So I would say it's the same age. Yeah.
That's so interesting. I mean, yeah.
I would think so. It would make sense, though, right? I mean,
well, that's the thing where it starts to get really tricky. We are water monkeys, but we haven't found any yet. That are that old.
Underwater.
Yeah. And these things don't survive, right? If you have a 50,000-year-old piece of wood,
no way,
or something made out of reeds, like the only way that you could preserve it is through drawings. This is what I was saying earlier.
Well, it's impossible that you would find a 50,000-year-old wooden boat, right?
No.
It just seems
if it's preserved on the very hard. Yeah,
and maybe
unless it's like covered by mud, like reduction environment, then it could be preserved like fossil.
Like a fossil, yeah. But fossils are very rare still.
That's right. Yeah.
So again, all of this underwater business is just impenetrable.
Yeah, and it's also, I don't know if you saw this a couple of years ago. There was a study published where a group, I think in Zambia, found a bunch of 500,000-year-old pieces of wood that they thought had been worked by Neanderthals. And so they're suggesting that the tendency to build things goes
It's
back that
very
far. And so whatever evidence we have is so piecemeal that it's impossible to tell a full picture.
Right.
But it's very cool.
You know that the Neanderthal lived with us for a long time, right? From 200,000 to 30,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Then they gone mysteriously. We don't know how they gone. They just disappeared. And recent studies from the DNA, the genetic studies, are showing that in about 30,000, there's a drop in population, very sharp. So it's kind of
still trying to make sense of it.
It's been published in Nature. My colleague from Singapore, and they right.
Did they have a reason for why that happened?
No, well, it's just DNA genetics. So I just know that there's a decline in population around 30,000 ago from the DNA analysis. But
what I'm trying to make sense of is, like, some of us have what is called Neanderthal DNA, right? There's some vestige, a little bit of Neanderthal DNA. And so I'm still trying to understand if they're really a different species or not, because technically we shouldn't be able to breed with a different species, right?
That's right.
So did we does it just mean we had a common ancestor then? Or were we, it's just, I can't make sense of it.
My favorite thing is what that guy who does the channel about the dog archaeology told us. He was like, look, if you dig up a skeleton of Shaquille O'Neal and also one of Danny DeVito, you're going to be like, these guys were different species. But they're clearly not. And so we don't have that many of these skeletons to judge from. And so to say that they were radically different.
I think people just really don't want to talk about races, is what it really comes down to, if I had to guess. It's like a very sensitive subject, right? And so if you talk about like different races of human beings, it's much easier to just call them species until that word doesn't make sense. And then you're just like, don't worry about it. But they seem like very distinct races of human beings in a sense. Did I just get us kicked off YouTube? Probably. Sorry. It's weird. It's very weird. The word species falls apart under scrutiny very often. We interviewed a marine biologist one time who was talking about these different species of rockfish that were breeding with each other. And we were like, wait, how are they breeding together if they're different species? And he's like, oh, fish do that all the time. And I'm just like, what does this word species even mean at the end of the day? It's just very confusing.
But the same genus, right? Genus.
I guess so.
Genus, species. Homo sapiens, Homo Neanderthal, Homo Denisovans. So species can breed because they're the same genus, Homo.
Oh, is that what I've been missing this whole time?
Yeah. Homo sapiens, Homo
so any
Neanderthal.
Of the homos
Homo
can breed with each other.
Maybe that's what's the fact, because we have the DNA from Neanderthal, right, and also from Denisovan. So.
Well, that's what's crazy is that, species in the dictionary is defined as those creatures that can mate to produce a fertile offspring. Like, that's the definition of species. And so if we're talking about Neanderthals being a different species than humans, but they're breeding and producing fertile offspring, clearly something has gone weird with the story of that.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't get it. But it's very cool work that you've been doing, Denny, and I'm glad to hear that you have so many more reams of data left to analyze and more to say about the ancient world.
I'm glad you didn't get scared off by your miserable experience with the academic publishers.
No, I don't. I love it. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating. So if people, like Elon Musk talking about the space exploration to see to look for the extraterrestrial, But what I say is, even ourselves, we don't really even know what is ourselves, ancestors, really. Still a mystery. So what I'm saying is, I think we should do the same effort, put some enough money to find out who the hell we are and who the hell our ancestors are.
We need some of that Elon money.
Our civilization developed. Yeah.
We should spread a rumor that there's an ancient civilization that had lots of gold. And that way people will want to look for it.
Rare earth metals. Something people want.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you, Danny. This is awesome. I hope that I hope you write that book and that we can have you back on the show to talk about the book after you get it done, because I believe that's going to be a really fun read.
That'd be really cool.
But is there anything else you want to say before we let you go? Do you have where can people find out about your work more? Where would you be sharing a lot of what you're doing in the future if people want to follow you? Are you do you have a website for your lab, or do you have social media or anything like that?
I would like to have like a website that has lots of things, but I just couldn't find the time yet. I'm still busy with all the things, but I just put things on my Facebook, but it's not much, but I put there. Yeah.
All right. Check him out on Facebook then, folks.
All right, we'll put a link in the description.
Yeah, my Facebook has
no shame.
Yep.
I also put your demystify science podcast in my Facebook too.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, we'll send you an email once we get it edited down, and we'll get it out to people. But yeah, thanks for coming by today. It was really fun to talk.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate
Thank
your
you
time.
so much. Enjoy your day.
Bye.
All right, take care.